let's send you out on the right note. PFF sucks. Have a great day, everybody.
Wow. What?
Yeah, that was JJ Watt saying PFF sucks on the Pat McAfee show. A lot of drama going on, and I guess that's what I do here on this channel sometimes, talk about Twitter drama. Yeah, let's get into it. So, it was a weird story that happened. This was the initial tweet that jumped everything off. It says, JJ Watt says, well, first there was the initial tweet of the highest graded quarterbacks from Wild Card Weekend, which first off, hey, PFF, get it together. It's Super Wild Card Weekend, not just Wild Card Weekend. But anyway, Jordan Love, Matt Stafford, Josh Allen, and Mahomes were the top four. And this was something that JJ Watt was not a fan of. JJ Watt, of course, a fan of the Houston Texans. He played his career there. So, big CJ Stroud guy, of course. He tweeted out this. This is what happens when you try to grade football players with an algorithm, ... CJ Stroud's performance was, quote unquote, graded a 77.8, and people treat this as gospel, facepalm emoji. PFF Sam, so one of the faces of PFF, responded saying, JJ, your first sentence shows you have no idea how the grade is arrived at. Maybe ask before tweeting about it, which I don't know if I listened to him on the podcast, just doing research for this video. It kind of reads as condescending for me. I don't know if he actually meant it that way, at least when he described on his podcast. He felt as though JJ was under the assumption that this is a computer-based algorithm that creates the PFF grade, which is not the case. It is a graded system. But I would go back to that last comment. People treating PFF grades as though they're gospel. This is a common criticism you hear from the detractors of PFF. Although, I'll be honest, just me personally, maybe it's because I tend to be, I think it's a tool to use. I like PFF grades. I don't treat them as their gospel, but I do think that they're a tool to pay attention to, if nothing else. Personally, I went back and watched the tape. I know, what a novel concept, actually watching the football game to figure out how well he played, and I would probably say that I'm closer to PFF. Again, PFF, it is a grading system of people watching the game and then giving, their grades towards it. I've always kind of viewed it as, just another person's opinion on this stuff. I, don't treat it as gospel, as, PFF themselves have, mentioned that there are plenty of good faith criticisms you can have of the system, and they even talked about those in their sort of response podcast to JJ Watt. Sam on the podcast mentioned that he doesn't necessarily feel as though JJ Watt fully understands the system and is maybe criticizing something that, he thinks that there are plenty of good criticisms that you can give towards it, but he just doesn't know if JJ Watt, that's his perspective, is he doesn't think JJ Watt fully understands what the system actually is. But this is a big point JJ Watt felt like, and even mentioned on the Pat McAfee show. He was very critical of the people that work at PFF.
Like they come from a very high and mighty place. Like they come and they speak like they know everything that there is to know about football, and they tell all these players and these coaches that they're so much smarter and that they're so much better and that they have these ways of figuring things out that are so much superior.
Yeah, that's saying a lot of things there that, I'm going to be honest, I've found to be opposite to be true. In fact, when I listened for research to hear what they were saying about JJ Watt, they specifically mentioned JJ Watt, brilliant guy. We'd love to have him on and kind of have a conversation about this if he would come on, which they also said, like, we get it, he's JJ Watt. Everyone would like to have him on their podcast, was kind of the implication I got there. But yeah, I mean, again, I haven't found that to be the case. That's just my perspective on it. It is possible someone said something dumb. I think what I would probably guess is some fan who was, dumb, said something like that, because that would be, usually how these things go. It's not actually the people there, but the fans that maybe don't fully get it either, but in the opposite direction. Or maybe it is something that, they actually do, that is actually the case. I can't say for certain. All I can say is my perspective, which is to be very much the opposite. And I would love to see if someone has a source of someone saying that they know more than, and quite frankly, I just don't believe that a PFF as a respected person who works for PFF, because again, it's a company, right? It's like saying ESPN. But I would be very surprised if the consensus in PFF was that they were the smart people, and everyone who played in the NFL and everyone who coaches in the NFL is a bunch of dumb idiots. I think everyone acknowledges that to play in the NFL, you have to be really smart at football, right? And probably be able to say that sentence better. Be really smart when it comes to football is what I was trying to say. Obviously J.J. Watt was kind of known for not just being a great player, but a very high IQ player. Although I would push back a little bit on the idea where, kind of almost feels like he's insinuating the opposite, that if you're someone who has played in the NFL, he did at one point say, like, I know, I've been there. That doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to be right about everything either, right? And I'm not even saying this from my own perspective. Listen, I tend to watch film. That's my number one way I get my information. I'm an idiot. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. I put a lot of effort into my opinions and I give them to you and hopefully you find them interesting. That's all I'm trying to do here with this channel, and, people like it and I'm thankful that they do because I have a lot of fun here and so do some people. And I would also mention, I don't think I'm smarter than anyone in these conversations. PFF Sam or JJ Watt, I think they're both much smarter than me. All of that was just to say that, there are sometimes bad lessons you can learn from playing as opposed to watching as a bystander. Billy Beane, famously, kind of the creator of Moneyball, he would intentionally go out and hire people who didn't play baseball because he felt like if you played baseball, well, then you would just feel like you have to do certain things, even if there's actually new evidence that's come out to say that that's actually probably not the case, right? What the nerds have been saying, you should go for it on fourth downs for decades, at least a decade now, but it's just really taken until now for teams to actually start doing it, and it has been very successful. It has. I mean, some people will disagree because some people just hate analytics, but it has been very successful. So, I would say it's a bit, I think a bit incorrect what JJ Watt is saying. And honestly, it kind of comes across a little bit like he's trying to make himself look better and make PFF look worse by saying, oh, they're the arrogant ones. Look at how arrogant they are. I listened to the podcast. They were kind of like, they're mad at me. That's weird. That was most of their reaction from what I got. So I'm not saying JJ Watt's perspective is wrong. I'm just saying I did not get that vibe when I listened to what they had to say. Another, I think, interesting thing to talk about is this next point. And this is probably the most important thing that we're going to talk about today, probably part of why I'm making the video, because otherwise it's just kind of silly drama. But this is interesting, I think, so we can talk about this.
I mean, I've literally sat in a meeting room with coaches and put the grades side by side, from a coach's grade and from the PFF grade. I've done it. And it's not even remotely close.
So that's interesting, right? I mean, because, again, J.J. Watt isn't just coming out and saying, like, hey, I disagree with, this to some degree. He's literally saying, no, I've looked at this, and I think that it is I think that it's actively often wrong. A couple questions there, though. Like, for one thing, is it using the same scale? Like, I'm assuming the coaching grade doesn't do the exact same scale that a PFF grade does, right? So it would make sense that the grades would be different if it's, a different scale, right? As opposed to, is it the exact same grading system? Basically what I'm trying to say is, if the system is, hey, you either grade each play plus 2 points, plus 1 point, 0 points, minus 1 point, or minus 2 points. If that is your system, and the coach grades it, and then a PFF grader grades it, and it's not even close, well, then that's an issue. Well, that's clearly, grader, potentially screwing up. But if one person's system is that first one, and then the other system is like, okay, you're going to grade each play on a scale of, 1 to 100 in either direction, well, then it would, of course, make sense for the overall grading system to be different, right? So that's just questions I have. Maybe it's, I'm curious to know about that. I don't know. It also is possible that, it's possible that PFF graders aren't as good as coaches. In fact, I would assume that that's the case to some degree, right? I would assume coaches are better at grading specific things than the PFF graders are. And of course, at the end of the day, coaches know the play calls, right? So they're going to be the ones who, they never have to throw a play out because they can't tell exactly what the assignment was. PFF graders do have to constantly throw out plays because they can't say for certain what assignment it is. So yeah, that's that. As a whole, there's several ways you could take this. It is possible JJ Watt just doesn't like that a player that he likes has gotten a low grade, which is certainly possible. It is possible that PFF is significantly off in certain aspects. And at the end of the day, the way I still evaluate quarterbacks is I watch the film and give my opinions on it there. So if you want to hear more of that, check out this channel and you can do that. And again, my perspective on PFF grades, to give that real quick, is like, do I think it's flawed? Yeah, I do. I think it's kind of maybe often too close to a batting average stat and doesn't take into account, a great play. While there is something that does, help that, like a big time throw stat that they use, I still think maybe you could weigh those a little bit heavier personally, and potentially even weigh turnover-worthy plays a little bit harsher. Would be maybe a way that I would personally tweak the algorithm. And now I'm calling it algorithm, right? That's just my personal opinion on the PFF grade. But again, I am someone who looked into it, and I do say that typically when a grade stands out as weird, I used to hate PFF way back in the day, but then people would, say, hey, what about this PFF grade? And I go back and watch the game and say, oh, they were actually kind of right about that. Like, that's just my own personal opinion. PFF has had people, actual NFL players look over the grading system and, sort of quote unquote audit it. And they've found it to be mostly good. And it's also worth mentioning, offensive coordinator of the Texans right now used to be a PFF grader. So that kind of feels like there is at least something there, and I don't think JJ Watt should be so quick to dismiss it. But that's how I view all of this. I could probably talk about this for an hour, but I'll stop now. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from y'all, and of course, as always, thanks for watching.